Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to unravel the incredibly complex web of networks, power, and systemic corruption in Nigeria. We'll be digging into some deep research from Chatham House, peering behind the curtain of high society networks, and looking at a fascinating real-world case study to see how a totally new approach might just flip the status quo on its head. So let's jump right in with a pretty vital question. Imagine you're in Lagos. It's this massive, hyper-competitive metropolis of over 20 million people. What do you think is the absolute ultimate survival skill there? Well, it's not just about how much money you have. It's actually all about networking. Navigating this environment means you have to know exactly who holds the levers of power and how they operate, because that dictates everyday life.
Section 1. The Lagos Power Network, where the real decisions are made.
You see, social life here is really about strategic positioning. In Lagos, being part of exclusive spots like the highly selective Metropolitan Club or the Ikoyi Club, which by the way has these very deep colonial roots, is absolutely crucial. It's not just about playing a round of golf. For the executives, the legacy families, and the global investors who hang out there, these places are basically informal boardrooms. They're the power lounges where vast networks are built, resources get quietly allocated, and massive influence is traded completely out of the public eye. Once you understand that, you start to see exactly why formal rules often take a back seat to a backroom handshake.
And what's wild is that this networking culture doesn't just stay in the commercial capital. The whole shebang cascades out. Decisions made in those exclusive hubs ripple outwards, impacting governance, daily survival, and policy across the entire map of Nigeria. The formal institutions we hear about, they're often just totally overshadowed by these deeply entrenched informal networks of favor.
Moving on to Section 2. A crisis of trust, the underbelly of power dynamics.
Chatham House did this extensive national household survey, and the results are, honestly, they're staggering. When looking at how citizens view formal institutions, a massive 46% of people surveyed said they greatly distrust the police. Meanwhile, only 7% hold great trust in them. And the federal government and justice system, they don't fare much better. This isn't just some mild skepticism. This is a profound, deep-seated decay in public trust. It's the result of years of normalized corruption, where people feel the rules literally do not protect them. If you've ever felt a system was rigged against the little guy, well, this data puts a hard number right on that feeling.
But here's where we hit a really fascinating moral paradox. The survey highlights that almost 60% of people feel that power and controlling resources are valued way more than honesty in their communities. They feel kind of resigned to it. But, and this is a huge but, a super reassuring 73.4% still feel real empathy when they see someone being taken advantage of. This proves that despite the systemic decay, Nigerians retain a deep sense of empathy and fundamentally desire a fairer society.
We really can't ignore the devastating physical cost of this environment, though. We are talking about billions lost to graft. Just to put that into perspective, the Auditor General reported over $117 million literally lost to contract fraud in just one single year back in 2020. And over the last 25 years, successive, top-down anti-corruption reforms have repeatedly stalled out or become politicized. Why? Simply because the underlying system continually rewards the people who exploit it.
Okay, Section 3. Flying against the wind, a case study in integrity.
Let's talk about Alan Onyema. He's the CEO of Air Peace, which is Nigeria's largest private airline. When he started the company in 2014, his motivation wasn't just to make a quick buck. As his quote captures so well, he was incredibly altruistic. He saw thousands of unemployed graduates and realized that just one single commercial jet could create 1,000 direct and indirect jobs. So instead of running a highly profitable private charter just for those elite club members we talked about earlier, he jumped into the brutal commercial aviation sector to create massive employment for indigent Nigerians.
Okay, you have to hear this because it's almost unbelievable. The guy running Nigeria's most successful private airline actually suffers from a severe phobia of flying. Actually, scratch that. It's so intense that he once flew a massive 400-seat Boeing 777 all the way to Brazil, completely empty, with just him on board. Why on earth would he do that? Because he absolutely refuses to fly on any other airline. He only trusts the rigorous safety and maintenance standards of his own company.
But of course, no good deed goes unpunished. His altruism was immediately met with some serious bureaucratic sabotage. Just look at this timeline. He was forced to wait 9 long years just to get land approval to build maintenance hangars in Nigeria. Without them, he had to drop $500,000 just to ferry a single plane to the US for a mandatory check. And when Air Peace launched its very first flight to London, Officials forced the plane to park 2 kilometers away from the terminal. Their excuse? They claimed the gate was reserved for a foreign airline that didn't even exist yet. It was just a blatant attempt by embedded interest to protect the status quo.
Despite facing this totally hostile system and having to borrow money at a crazy 35% interest rate, Onyema actually succeeded. How? Through sheer fiscal discipline and absolute integrity. He didn't treat bank loans as free money. And when he succeeded, he completely disrupted the market. He slashed those exorbitant London ticket prices from $3,000 down to just $800. Plus, during global crises like the COVID-19 lockdowns and xenophobic attacks in South Africa, Air Peace flew across the globe to evacuate stranded Nigerians completely free of charge. It's a perfect example of what happens when a business is driven by purpose instead of just patronage.
Section 4. Integrity Role Models. Define the status quo. Chatham House research actually defines people like Onyema as integrity role models. Basically, this is a credible individual who actively resists corrupt norms and champions behavioral change. They make ethical behavior super visible. But the kicker is they bear the immense personal cost and the steep risks of standing up to a system that's actively trying to pull them down. They're the ones proving to the rest of society that doing things differently is actually possible. And this perfectly explains why these role models are mathematically vital to a society. They break something called pluralistic ignorance. Now, what's that? It's basically this psychological trap where you personally hate paying bribes or cheating the system, but you do it anyway because you mistakenly think everyone else is perfectly fine with it. Role models completely shatter that illusion. They are the spark that shows the silent majority they aren't alone in wanting fairness. It really shows how one visible act of integrity can change the whole psychological landscape.
Finally, Section 5, the power of coalitions, from individual heroes to networked change.
The ultimate solution lies in what the Chatham House framework calls networked coalitions. Instead of just waiting around for slow, centralized, top-down government mandates that usually fail, the strategy has to shift. It's all about building dynamic, distributed grassroots groups. By connecting reform-minded lawmakers, business leaders like Onyema, and local activists, they can pool their resources, share strategies, and systematically shift those social norms right from the ground up.
But to support these coalitions, you need specific policies to lower the danger of speaking out. The research recommends 4 concrete steps. First, mandating public asset declarations so official wealth can actually be tracked. Second, passing strict whistleblower protection laws to guard the folks who report graft. Third, using digital tech for e-procurement so government contracts are transparent. And fourth, applying international visa bans to raise the personal cost for corrupt actors trying to hide their illicit wealth abroad.
So what does this all mean for the future? After looking at all this data, the fascinating psychological paradoxes, and the sheer perseverance of entrepreneurs fighting the system, we are left with one massive, profound question. Will Nigeria's future be defined by closed, self-serving networks of power, or will it be transformed by open, courageous coalitions of integrity? Honestly, the prosperity of the next generation depends entirely on the answer. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I highly encourage you to reflect on how these exact dynamics of power and trust play out in the systems all around you.